Confidentiality and supervision. So once trust is established, the supervisee may grow more comfortable with their professional vulnerabilities, and a good supervisor will seize those opportunities to help the supervisee crystallize their professional identity. Confidentiality and supervision, in the sense described previously, pertains to maintaining the professional dignity of the supervisee and not to use the information revealed to exploit or hold against him or her. Like any other confidentiality, though, there are times when a supervisor may have to disclose. These ethical dilemmas of confidentiality should flow from the social work professional code of ethics, but there are additional constraints to the supervisee that must include agency policy. Empowerment. Empowering supervisees is a methodical process that needs to be carefully scaffolded in order to maximize its benefits. Empowering staff often requires the supervisor has equipped them with essential tools. It includes building their professional efficacy to incrementally augment their ability to master tasks. Staff retention. Agencies are at a higher risk of not keeping staff due to high levels of burnout, high stress, low wages. Previously, it was thought that those who worked longer days were constantly accessible and exceeded expectations was a sign of loyalty to the agency. However, it is becoming more aware that those are actually signs of burnout and may cause staff to quit. Now more than ever, work-life balance is increasingly important to those in the workforce across all ages, and flexibility in a job is also increasingly appealing across the board. So these are some questions that the book listed for staff training and development. So what is the purpose of the investment? Who will benefit from the investment? How far-reaching will the investment be? What are short-term gains, long-term gains? What sacrifices need to be made to make this investment? How is the organization compensating for lack of investment? How will the organization sustain the gains of this investment, and what resources are needed in order to do so? So evaluations, there are formal or informal evaluations. So formal uses standardized measures set by the agency or used by the agency, usually set intervals. Annually is most common, but can be quarterly as well. Skills and deficits are articulated. Goals and objectives, along with benchmarks for examining future progress, are mutually agreed on. And then informal evaluation, feedback occurs organically and can be individual or team oriented. It's not just a job well done or good job. It's more thoughtful, more extensive than just telling someone good job. Coaching is embedded in the process, and there's communication fluency between the supervisor and supervisee. Both are speaking the same language and hearing the same message. So this is about progressive discipline and corrective actions, step by step. Most of the topics and areas of concerns that are covered are the same throughout each step. But step 1 is supervision meetings. So the topics: document supervision meetings by topics covered, areas of concern, the follow-up steps, who's responsible, the time frame or completion dates, methods for reporting back and evaluating outcomes, providing written description of patterns that are cause for concern in an objective fashion, documenting assistance that was or will be provided to help the supervisee improve. Step 2 is written warnings. Objectively state the issue of concern, reference any previous conversations or professional counseling that occurred, and document the following areas, which are pretty much the same as the last one: topics covered, follow-up steps, person responsible, time frame, method for reporting back and evaluating, and potential outcomes that will result if performance improvement plan is not adhered to. Step 3 is personnel conferences, including written documentation of meeting held to address critical areas of performance concerns. Document the following: topics covered, follow-up steps. person responsible for follow-up steps, time frame, methods, potential outcomes, statement that they were offered to respond in writing to the conference, summary, document signed by all parties. Step 4 is suspension without pay. This is not a mandatory step. A lot of times this step does not happen, but documentation, pretty much the same as last time. Statement that supervisee was offered the opportunity to respond in writing, and then a summary document signed by all parties. And the last step is termination. So the employee is informed about procedures for filing an appeal, provided information about final paycheck and insurance if applicable, and then the same documentation as before. When indicated, the agency may seek consultation from an attorney. Managing incompetent and destructive employees. So incompetence includes insufficient assessment skills, inability to engage clients, limited use and knowledge of interventions, poorly written and poorly conceptualized treatment plans, disorganized oral presentation of cases, and so on. A lack of critical thinking can sometimes signal that the supervisee also needs help to raise self-awareness. Destructive employees can be thieves and act hostilely towards others, bully them, passive-aggressive, infuse a spirit of adversity, fraught with personal problems that get dragged into the workplace environment, or have inappropriate boundaries with clients or staff. Being fair does not mean doing the same thing for everybody, but because everyone's situation is different and therefore requires different solutions. Legally protected employees, so these are people that fall under the Equal Employment Opportunity, Equal Pay Act, Americans with Disability Act, Age Discrimination Act. So employment laws are beyond the scope of this chapter, but supervisors are obligated to consider the how legislation impacts the work environment. It also said that just because an employee may fall under one of these categories doesn't mean that they can't be fired for disciplinary action. Staff diversity can include race, ethnicity, class, religion, age, sexual orientation, gender identification, expression, marital status, and physical and cognitive abilities. Many aspects of diversity to consider. Sexism is the discrimination of a person based on gender. While an organization may combat this by educating employees about sexual harassment, sexist discourse, and discrimination of members of the LGBTQIA community, there are times when a supervisor is faced with more nuanced forms of sexism. Ageism is another discriminatory action which can creep into the workplace, treating employees differently based on their age, stereotyping older generations as less tech-savvy and less effective performers. Supervisors must be aware of the many possibilities of diversity and seek to understand and promote understanding and acceptable behaviors in others in accordance with social work values and employment laws.